A beep. Another beep. And a message that sounds almost routine. Dropping 2 weights, cut, silence. Beneath that silence, there are 3,880 meters of water. And at the bottom, a magnet for human obsession. The Titanic, a voyage sold as exclusive, technological. But money cannot bend the rules of the ocean. The ocean does not negotiate. At that depth, the pressure is around 5,554 pounds per square inch. It is a world alien to ours, a place where your margin for error is practically zero. And even so, 5 people went down there inside a tube. A tube sold, moreover, as a $250,000 per seat experience. A seat to see the most famous shipwreck in history. An exclusive seat that added them to the list of Titanic victims. Because the Titanic was a monument to arrogance, and Titan was too. Today, you will understand that this tragedy was a tragedy full of warnings, many warnings. There were warnings in 2018. There were warnings in 2022. Its final signal was transmitted in 2023, when the entire world for hours believed there was still a chance. According to the later technical analysis, the implosion was almost instantaneous. There was no time for messages. There was no time for panic. There was no time for heroism. There was physics. The real story is not about the disappearance. The real story is about what happened before the disappearance. Because the mystery is not how they were lost. The mystery is, why did they keep going down? The cause of the tragedy points to inadequate engineering processes. The strength and durability of the hull were not reliably proven. A carbon fiber composite cylinder was operated, even though it had already shown delaminations and additional damage. And when that material, carrying that damage, faced the abyss, it failed. Local buckling, implosion, the end. The story could end here, but it does not end here. Because if this were just a one-time failure, it would be an accident. But what we can see is a pattern. Ignored warnings, internal culture, a regulatory vacuum, and a dangerous illusion disguised as technology. They called that illusion real-time monitoring. The idea was simple. If the hull was weakening, sensors would say so before it was too late. Like a traffic light, green, yellow, red. A promise that would reassure anyone, right? A promise that, in a place where there are no second chances, can make you addicted to self-deception. And that self-deception starts long before the final message. To understand this, we first have to understand the rules of the world where it happens. The depth of the Titanic is not a tourist destination. It is an extreme environment. At 3,880 meters, the water crushes you with brutal constancy. It is not a wave. It is not a storm. It is a continuous, uniform, relentless force. And when you descend, your entire life expectancy is reduced to 2 factors beyond your control: that the hull holds, and that your communication with the surface does not fail. Because on the surface, 3,880 meters above you, the support ship is not a spectator. It is your umbilical cord, the same cord that on the final descent was cut. But before we get to that moment, let's go back. 2018, a letter. A letter that, if it had been taken seriously, would today be nothing more than a boring document. In March 2018, part of the technical community sent a warning with a phrase that should have frozen everything: unanimous concern. It was not criticism on social media. It was not a comment from a hater. It was experts from the technical world saying, this needs review and validation by a third party. DNV-GL, ABS, organizations, standards, outside eyes. Because in the ocean, trust is not earned through charisma. It is earned through verification. And the letter also exposed an even more disturbing clash: marketing versus reality. Advertising that you comply with standards. At a minimum, that was misleading. And you may be thinking right now, okay, someone read the letter. They got scared. They corrected course. But no, it was not the beginning of a correction. It was the beginning of a dynamic that screamed, we are different. We break rules. We are not the industry. And that narrative can sound cool until you realize that you are not breaking bureaucracy. You are breaking the only system designed to keep people from dying. Worse still, when you have a company selling seats at yacht-level prices to dive to the Titanic, every delay costs money, reputation, and the faith of your clients. So the question is not only technical, it is human. What happens in the mind of a team when its business depends on getting to yes quickly? What happens is that you start confusing courage with denial, and that confusion becomes culture. 2018. Another piece appears, an internal conflict with someone who, according to documents and reports, raised safety concerns. It was not an academic discussion, it was a clash, an employee saying, "This is not ready." And the company, according to the public record, responded the way many organizations do when the message threatens the model, defensively, in legal terms, and with pressure. And this is where we can observe a detail that seems small, but changes everything. Because if you punish the person who tells you the truth, what you are training in your team is not excellence, it is silence. And silence at the bottom of the ocean kills you. Warnings become real when the system speaks to you out loud. And the system spoke in 2022. July 15th, 2022. Dive number 80. Titan descends. Everything seems normal. And then, a bang, a loud sound. Not some romantic creaking, not a minor scare. An event significant enough that it was later associated with consistent signs of delamination. Delamination is when the layers of a composite material begin to separate. It is the beginning of the end, like an invisible crack that grows every time the pressure cycle is repeated. But here is the question that should haunt you. If you had a clear warning at that depth, why didn't you stop? Why didn't you retire that hull? Why did you keep operating? If I could be... And the answer, once again, is not just engineering, it is psychology. Because this is where the emotional mechanism OceanGate, sold as safety, comes in. Real-time monitoring, RTM, acoustic sensors, strain gauges, impact thresholds, the promise that the hull would warn you before it broke. As if the submersible could tell you, I feel fine, I feel bad, I can still hold. That same system, according to the later analysis, did not detect what it was supposed to detect. The analysis was flawed. It did not escalate the signal into an alarm, even though the hull was being damaged. And if you think that is only a software or interpretation failure, think about what it really means. It means someone could descend feeling protected, when in reality, they were going down inside a material that was already wounded. It is like driving with a check engine light that never comes on. Not because the engine is fine, but because the sensor is installed wrong, and the engine is destroyed anyway. Now, let's put these pieces together. 2018, letter of unanimous concern. 2018, internal safety conflict. 2022, a crack associated with damage, and even so. June 18th, 2023, the final descent. This is where the story turns into cinema, because the entire world lived through this as a real-time thriller. That morning, the communication checks begin. Right there, the fragility of the system is already visible. No window, no GPS, no easy plan B. There are messages as the only connection. The moment arrives, 10:47. A text, dropping 2 weights. A phrase that by itself could mean routine, lightening the craft, adjusting buoyancy, managing the descent profile. 2 minutes later, 10:49, tracking is lost. Then the public narrative splits in two. Because during those days, the world thought maybe they lost communication, maybe they are trapped, maybe they are still alive, maybe there is still time. But on the technical map, the reading was different. When you lose communication and tracking like that, in that context, the darkest possibility should always be the main one. But the problem is that, according to technical reports, losing communication had already been normalized on previous occasions, sometimes because of malfunctions, sometimes because of operational details. And when you normalize something that dangerous, you train your brain not to react. That is routine's cruelest trick. It numbs you. That is why an internal plan exists that, in theory, tells you what to do if contact is lost. Ascend after a certain amount of time, around 60 minutes after losing communications. That would be logical. That would be a rule designed to keep silence from becoming a grave. Then comes the question, if the plan said ascend, why did the world keep waiting? Why was it not perceived as an emergency immediately? Even when your only lifeline is broken, there is a stretch of time in which the human mind clings to the comfortable explanation. The signal dropped. It'll pass. And that it'll pass is lethal when you are 3,880 meters under the sea. Because if Titan had still been alive, there would have been a window of oxygen, a window for rescue, a window for a miracle. And that is why, when the world learns there is no contact, the reaction is immediate. Resources are mobilized. People speak of a global hunt, ships, sonar, aircraft, headlines. Every hour feels like a countdown, but reality is sometimes far crueler. Because if the implosion occurred near the moment tracking was lost, then all that suspense was a mirage. And that mirage did not happen because people were foolish. It happened because the ocean does not give you instant evidence. It gives you silence, and silence looks like hope, until it becomes a sentence. June 22nd, 2023, 4 days later. A debris field is confirmed, and with that, the global suspense is severed like a cord. No one is looking for a submersible anymore. What is found is an ending, a brutal ending, a rapid ending. Because implosion is not a slow shipwreck. It is not we are sinking. It is a disappearance in the blink of an eye. And then, the story changes genre, from rescue thriller to case study. July 2023, OceanGate announces the suspension of operations. And from that point on, layers that had previously been hidden from the public begin to appear. Hearings, testimony, technical details, material traces, porosity, voids, desponding, wrinkles or waviness in the fiber. Words that sound like they belong in a laboratory, but they mean one thing: imperfections. And when we are talking about a hull that must withstand 5,554 pounds per square inch, an imperfection is not a cosmetic defect. It is a starting point for collapse. 2024. Marine Board hearings are held over 2 weeks, dozens of witnesses. This is no longer a Twitter debate. This is people speaking under oath. And what emerges is an antagonist most people did not see at first: the regulatory vacuum. Because these kinds of operations and novel designs can fall into gaps, and those gaps, were they being filled by science or by the business model? And here lies the moral conflict that makes this story so powerful. Was it extreme tourism, or was it research? Was it a mission, or was it a business? Because that answer changes what is required, what gets certified, what gets inspected, and what gets allowed. August 5th, 2025. The Coast Guard publishes findings and recommendations. It says the tragedy was preventable. Recommendations are listed: And that, in human language, means this was not a meteorite. It was not a sea monster. It was a chain. And every link in that chain involved decisions. October 2nd, 2025, the final technical report is released. And that word, preventable, becomes the true center of the story. Because if it was preventable, then the story is not only about Titan. It is about us, about why we fall in love with the idea that breaking rules is the same as progress, about why we confuse disruptive with invincible, about why, when someone tells us there is a catastrophic risk here, we would rather think they are exaggerating. What was the exact first piece to fail? The adhesive, the cylinder, a joint. Where exactly did the first domino begin? Because there are things that, even with reports, fragments, and testimony, remain like an irregular edge, and that makes this case even more unsettling. Not only because 5 people died, but because, in a certain sense, the person most responsible also died. And when the person responsible dies, accountability becomes a ghost. The company remains, the industry remains, the system remains, but the face goes to the bottom. So in that moment, the only thing left is the lesson. And the lesson is simple, uncomfortable, and eternal. Innovation is not a shortcut when the judge is physics. You can sell narrative, you can sell epic, you can sell mission. But at 3,880 meters, the ocean demands something else: proof, verification, humility. Because the Titanic was not only a ship that sank, it was a warning written in steel. And more than a century later, a man decided to sell the idea that he could touch that warning without fully obeying it. And the ocean answered, as it always answers, without hatred, without drama, without mercy, only with pressure. Or, what do you think? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, support the channel by subscribing. That way, we can keep bringing you new mysteries. And tell me, is there a specific story you'd like us to tell for you? Sending you a hug.